Clara Jensen had lived all 32 years in Maribel, a postcard-pretty town cupped by lilac-covered hills and ribbed with cobblestone streets that still rang like old cathedral bells under horsehoof and bicycle wheel. Maribel was famous for three things: its century-old glassworks, its annual midsummer kite festival, and the sheer number of statues that dotted every square, alley, and garden. There were bronze fishermen beside the river, marble suffragists outside the library, a laughing quartet of stone children in the schoolyard, even a whimsical topiary-framed terracotta donkey near the market. On crisp mornings, their shadows stretched across doorsteps like patient guardians. By night, they vanished into darkness, just one more piece of quiet scenery in a town that locked its doors early and slept soundly from dusk till dawn. Clara, a reporter for the Maribel Gazette, never thought to question the statue's stillness until the morning she noticed something odd outside City Hall. The limestone memorial of Mayor Batiste, erected 50 years prior, stood on a high plinth with one arm permanently extended toward the horizon. Yet that Tuesday, Clara saw fresh dirt under its right hand, as though the statue had reached down to pat the soil. Stranger still, the tulip bed at the plinth space, which the groundskeepers had scheduled for replanting next week, was already perfectly turned and replanted with bright pink bulbs. A neat handwritten card wedged between tulips read simply, "With gratitude to our beloved town of Friend." Clara asked around. No gardener had worked overnight, no volunteer group claimed credit. The security cameras on City Hall steps were, according to the sheriff, curiously fogged from midnight to dawn. Clara's curiosity clicked on like a flashlight. She photographed the replanted flowers, interviewed the perplexed groundskeeper, and returned to the newsroom with an unfinished story humming in her pocket. 2 nights later, another mystery bloomed. The fountain in Jonas Square, home to a bronze harpist whose strings eternal water cascaded through, was known for collecting coins flung by wishmakers. On Thursday morning, the basin was empty, scrubbed clean, and every coin had been quietly stacked on the stone lip in tidy towers sorted by denomination. A laminated sign said, "For the Children's Clinic," with an arrow pointing to a locked donation box that had also, miracle of miracles, been filled past capacity. Again, no witnesses, no camera footage, no volunteer stepping forward to accept praise. Rumors fluttered through Maribel faster than gossip between clotheslines. Some blamed a crafty charity group, trying to drum up donations through secrecy. Others whispered about amateurs pretending to be superheroes. Clara, sitting at her cluttered desk, stared at the printed photographs of the tulips and coin towers. She flipped open her notebook to a blank page, wrote "statues" in red ink, and laughed at her own absurdity until a shiver of possibility made her pen hover. Maribel possessed an old folk legend, the kind repeated by grandparents when fireplaces crackled and power outages canceled television. The legend said that the town's statues were carved with listening stone, meaning the sculptors had mixed shards of an otherworldly mineral into their mediums. If treated kindly by townsfolk, the statues would absorb gratitude and one day repay it. Clara had dismissed the tale as a romantic explanation for why Maribel took such pride in public art, but now the legend pressed its cold nose against her skepticism. So she planned a stakeout. Late Friday night, Clara packed a thermos of coffee, a pair of binoculars, her camera, and a flashlight with a red filter, then bicycled to Jonas Square. She crouched behind a row of box hedges, hidden yet with a perfect view of the bronze harpist and the adjacent marble statue of Aveline Keats, the town's first librarian. Midnight chimed from the clock tower like a slow heartbeat. Nothing moved except leaves tickled by wind. Clara sipped her coffee and fought yawns. At 12:37, she blinked. Once, twice certain fatigue was tricking her. But when her eyes cleared, she saw Aveline Keats stretch her marble arms, smooth her stone skirt, and step quietly off her pedestal. Clara's breath snagged like a button in a buttonhole. The bronze harpist was moving too gently, twisting his torso, flexing fingers that had never before loosened from eternal chord positions. Water continued to splash through invisible strings, but now droplets ran across his awakened knuckles like quicksilver. Aveline glanced around the square, an expression, was it alertness, amusement, ghosting across her otherwise calm face. She looked so alive under moonlight that Clara half expected to hear breathing. It was not a dream. Clara pressed her thumbnail into her wrist, sharp enough to hurt. The statues turned toward each other, nodded in silent greeting, then began walking with soft clinks of stone and bronze against cobblestone. Clara followed at a distance, her pulse drumming so loudly she feared they'd hear. She tracked them through narrow streets where gas lamps painted golden pools, past shuttered bakeries, over the arched Prosperity Bridge where two fishing rod statues guarded opposite ends. On the far side of town lay St. Bridget's Orphanage, a modest residence with peeling paint and a roof in perpetual need of repair. The statues approached the front gates, undid the latch with practiced ease, and entered the sleeping grounds. Slowly, from a hidden vantage, Clara watched as Aveline placed a marble finger to her lips. An unnecessary gesture among statues, but one that made Clara's spine fizz with wonder, and produced from under her stone shawl a small toolbox presumably carried from Jonas Square, though Clara had not noticed it before. The bronze harpist opened the second-floor window shutters without a creak. Was that possible? And hoisted himself inside. For the next 2 hours, Clara witnessed silent industry. Aveline repaired loose hinges on dormitory doors, then sharpened the orphanage's scattered pencils by rolling their tips against her marble palm. The harpist restrung a battered acoustic guitar left in the common room. When both completed their tasks, they tiptoed outdoors to tackle the sagging swing set. With measured pulls, they adjusted chains, straightened the frame, and replaced missing bolts with extras from the toolbox, all under starlight. All wordless. Near 3 o'clock, they cleaned their hands, bronze knuckles wiping on marble skirt, marble palms brushing against bronze shoulder before exiting the orphanage and retracing their path toward Jonas Square. Clara followed, mind sizzling. As the figures approached their pedestals, they slowed, climbed back into rigid poses, and froze. Their living glint dulled, replaced by ordinary metallic and stone stillness. The town clock chimed 4, and nothing remained of their nocturnal labor except a lingering hush, like the tale of a lullaby. Clara stumbled home, heart full, recorder untouched, camera hanging heavy with unused film. She collapsed into bed thinking, how do you report news nobody will believe? The next morning, St. Bridget's staff and children woke to sharpened pencils, tuned guitar, oiled doors, and a gleaming swing set. A chalkboard in the hallway bore a new sentence in tidy handwriting, "Keep dreaming, little stars." Sister Miriam attributed the work to an anonymous benefactor and led the children in a round of thanks before breakfast. The Gazette ran a small piece about midnight miracle at the orphanage. Clara, editing the article, omitted her eyewitness knowledge, choosing instead to quote Sister Miriam. She needed time to think. Days passed, and each dawn delivered fresh wonders. The iron statue of railroad worker Tomas Nell in Old Depot Yard was spotted polishing the rusted train tracks. By morning, the lines gleamed like silver ribbons, and a neglected freight engine sat steam-ready. The granite figure of Dr. Amelia Rhodes outside Mercy Hospital somehow restocked the blood bank overnight with donations labeled "Positive with Love." The playful donkey near the market left baskets of vegetables on doorsteps of struggling families. Each act bore the same calling card: a friend. The town buzzed like a shaken snow globe. Citizens woke early hoping to be first to discover the latest gift. Teenagers placed broken bicycles beside statues at dusk, and by dawn the bikes were repaired, tires inflated, switchgears fine-tuned. Shopkeepers left anonymous suggestion lists for improvements. The next morning those tasks were completed. Nobody saw the statues move in person. Clara kept her secret, but everyone felt their presence like a communal heartbeat. With mysteries multiplying, Sheriff Tully increased patrols, yet every guard fell asleep at critical times or found themselves inexplicably distracted. Cameras glitched, lights flickered, watches stopped. Technology, it seemed, bowed politely to the statue's privacy. The sheriff grumbled but accepted the goodwill, reasoning that unsolved generosity beat unsolved crime any day. Clara's editor begged for an expose. Advertisers offered premium space if she could reveal the identities behind the miracles. But for once, the journalist resisted the scoop. She cherished the quiet hush of magic, the way townspeople's shoulders lifted and their conversations brightened. Besides, who would believe a detailed account of mobile marble? Instead, Clara proposed a series titled Kindness Catches, chronicling how citizens had started emulating the statues. Inspired shopkeepers kept longer hours for elderly customers, teenagers volunteered at the animal shelter, a shy accountant left gift cards in library books. Streets previously graffitied with foolish tags sprouted murals of hope. When locals spoke of the statues now, they adopted affectionate nicknames: the librarian, the harpist, the railman, the healer. The donkey. The town's hearts beat in step with these silent heroes. One chilly evening, Clara found herself standing before the memorial of Mayor Batiste, the statue whose tulip bed had sparked everything. She touched the limestone shoe with tentative fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure if the stone could hear. The act felt simultaneously silly and sacred. She left behind a small notebook containing blank pages and a pen, a gift for any statue needing to write messages. At midnight, Clara watched from her apartment window as Mayor Baptiste stepped down and picked up the notebook. Under lamplight, he wrote a single sentence, then replaced the gift. The next morning, townsfolk gathered, her notebook now open to a fresh page. "It is your turn now." The sentence was interpreted as both encouragement and challenge. Citizens redoubled efforts. Retirees organized neighborhood cleanups. Children emptied allowance jars for the food bank. A group of mechanics repaired the town's derelict carousel. Soon, acts of goodwill outpaced the statue's contributions. The marble and bronze figures seemed content to spend some nights simply observing from pedestals, their tasks largely completed by human hands. Yet one worry knotted Clara's thoughts. What if outsiders learned of Maribel's enchantment and tried to exploit it? What if someone captured a statue mid-stride and locked it in a lab? The town had become a sanctuary of mutual kindness. Its secret deserved protection. She decided, therefore, to carry the story outside Maribel's borders in a different form, a children's book. By fictionalizing the events, she could spread the idea without revealing the town's identity. She wrote late into evenings, her window facing Jonas Square, so she could occasionally wave to Aveline Keats. The librarian would sometimes tip her head a millimeter, barely more than a trick of moonlight, yet enough encouragement for Clara to continue. The manuscript, titled The Midnight Helpers, featured statues that embodied virtues, patience, bravery, curiosity, and taught children that good deeds bloom in silence. Clara planned to donate all profits to St. Bridget's and the clinic. One fog-shrouded dawn, after she typed her final sentence, Clara decided it was time to formally meet her secret friends. She printed copies of the manuscript, bound them with ribbon, and waited at Jonas Square with a lantern, glowing faint red to signal she was awake but discreet. When midnight chimed, the statues stirred. Aveline Keats descended first, stone skirts whispering. The harpist followed, bronze feet clicking softly. One by one, they formed a semicircle around Clara, who trembled not with fear, but with reverence. She bowed her head and held out the manuscript. Aveline accepted it, leafing through pages with cautious thumbs. The harpist peered over her shoulder, lips parted as though to hum. The donkey from the market trotted into view, ears flicking in bemused delight. Clara spoke, her voice catching. "I will never expose you, but I wanted you to know your kindness is spreading beyond Maribel." The librarian raised the manuscript, tapped the cover, and nodded, a gesture of approval. Then she retrieved Clara's pen and wrote in the margin, "Stories keep magic safe." She placed the pen back, patted Clara's hand, and stepped away. The semicircle dissolved, the statues returned to their pedestals. Clara stood alone, tears prickling her eyelids, but her heart buoyant. Winter arrived in gauzy layers of chill, frosting roofs and painting window panes with delicate ferns. The statues continued selective missions, delivering firewood to shut-ins, mending a burst pipe beneath the school gym, stringing lanterns across Main Street before the holiday parade. Yet more often they appeared to simply watch, as citizens took ownership of care. On December 24, all statues remained motionless through the night, their confidence apparently complete. The Gazette published a special holiday edition featuring photographs of townspeople volunteering at every corner. Clara's editorial read, "It takes only one quiet hero to wake an army of compassion. Listen for the beat of kindness. It sounds like your own heart." No mention of marble, no hint of bronze. 1 year after the tulip bed incident, Maribel celebrated the first Night of Gratitude. At sunset, every resident placed a lit candle at the base of a nearby statue, regardless of which figure stood guard over their block. Streets glowed with thousands of flames, each flickering reflection creating the illusion that statues blinked and smiled. Families gathered, shared stories, and pledged next year's projects. The mayor inaugurated a new town motto, "Stillness holds promise." During the ceremony, Clara noticed a new plaque at the foot of Aveline Keats's pedestal. It hadn't been there hours earlier. She knelt to read, "In honor of those who act when no one watches and speak only through deeds, may we follow in silence and thunder with goodness." The plaque bore no signatures, but its letters shimmered with the faintly iridescent dust of that otherworldly mineral. Clara traced the lines with her glove, feeling warmth radiate through the metal despite the crisp night air. She looked up at Aveline, whose eyes seemed softer than ever, and whispered, "We will." As midnight neared, townsfolk extinguished candles, trusting the statues to enjoy darkness without prying eyes. Clara lingered last, standing in the empty square where shadows pooled like ink. She thought of the centuries ahead, new statues rising, older ones weathering, all absorbing kindness like sandstone soaks up sun. She pictured children not yet born, accepting secret miracles as naturally as rainfall. She pictured herself, gray-haired, still believing. A single snowflake spiraled down and landed on Eveline's shoulder. Clara caught its twin on her glove, marveling at the fragile architecture that vanished seconds later. The clock tower began its slow count to 12. Clara stepped back, nodded to the statues, and turned toward home. Behind her, stone and bronze figures prepared to live again in the privacy of moonlight. Ahead of her, the road glimmered with the promise of new stories waiting to be told, and Maribel, the town of silent heroes, slept soundly, its dreams kept bright by statues who breathed only when nobody watched, and by citizens who had learned that loving your neighbor is, in its own way, a form of waking from stone.